welcome everyone. My name is Jonathan Russell with the Hourglass. This is part of our Listening to Lancaster series, and today we are very excited to have with us Assets. So we've got Jonathan Coleman, President and CEO of Assets, as well as Melisa Baez. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
And then joining me from the Hourglass side is our chairman, Art Mann. Thanks, Art, for being here.
Glad to be here. So off we go.
All right. So as part of what we've been doing with these calls is just to kind of see where you are as an organization right now. I know that you've been doing lots of great work in the community, but just to kind of highlight how COVID has affected your operations and how you reach out to those businesses that you work with. Just if you want to take it away from there, we can start.
Sure, maybe I'll jump in first and speak just a minute about internally what the changes have looked like for Assets, and then Melisa could talk about the external activities. But yeah, you know, like everyone, we've had to figure out how to work from home. We always had a fairly flexible work environment at Assets. So the transition wasn't too difficult, but you know, we did have to go through steps of learning how to all be in different places. The technical aspects of doing the work actually haven't been that hard. I think probably most have a similar experience in realizing that it's more about the communication, the culture, the team building, the team dynamics are the pieces that we're missing. And where I think, you know, some of the water cooler conversations, which really help us enhance our work and help me as a leader keep my finger on the pulse of how staff is feeling and thinking. I miss that. And so, you know, that means that in some ways we maybe have lost some effectiveness or some of the camaraderie, which helps us do our jobs better. But, you know, it's been I'm proud of how our team has come together and been able to keep doing the work, keep performing well in the midst of these challenges.
Great.
I would say similarly to our programs, we thrive on that group setting. So most of the trainings and seminars that we do are always face-to-face, and having to pivot to this virtual programming has been a little bit of a challenge, but I think our team has stepped up and done a really great job and have managed to bring that fierceness into all of our sessions. Additionally, we've actually spent a lot of time in the first couple months of COVID and quarantine actually talking to every single entrepreneur one-on-one and doing a personal check-in to continue on with our relationships that we've managed to build pre-quarantine. So I would say surprisingly, we've managed to maintain our relationships and in the Assets way, in the culture that we have spent the past few years building. So
Cool. And Melisa, how many entrepreneurs do you work with?
We work with I think we have over 500. Jonathan, you could check me on that, but we have over 500 active clients where we spent the first couple months calling and emailing every single one just to see where they're at in the process or how COVID has impacted them. And also how we could better serve them during this pandemic.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's great. And so, in terms of some of your biggest challenges, I'm sure that keeping those relationships flowing and as far as that goes, but also what other challenges in terms of financial challenges with these businesses have they been able to reach out to you in terms of resources? I know you've talked a little bit, I've seen a lot of the work on your website at least about the small business loans. So how has that all worked with the mission of Assets?
Yeah, you know, I think the biggest challenge, like stepping up a little bit above even the tactics that you're talking about, is just really like, how do we meet this moment? So we are an organization that has two key focus areas which overlap in many ways. One is supporting small businesses, in particular small businesses from underrepresented and underserved communities. So obviously COVID has had a profound effect on those businesses, and therefore there's a greatly enhanced need for our services, for what we provide. So, and then the other side of our work is helping businesses of all sizes be better for their community, be a stronger community actor, making sure that Lancaster is better off because their business exists. And so now, which obviously COVID impacts that as well, and then you overlay the latest social movements and the protests and the conversations around racial equity, and also a moment that we need to step into as assets. So these two things combined have been really where our heads have been, of just, how do we step into that void and acknowledge that this is an important moment. Both of these things are important moments in our country's history, and we have an important role to play here in Lancaster, and we don't want to shirk that responsibility. We want to step into it and shoulder more responsibility because the needs are there. So it's been a challenge to navigate the craziness of the world, but it has been an opportunity to step into roles that are new to us because they're needed, and someone need to do it, and we're happy to fill the gaps.
Yeah, this is Art. I'm thinking, I'd be interested to know if the 500 companies that you work with, whether you've broken it down to types of businesses, and then which ones have been forced to close, or which ones are on kind of life support financially, which ones are actually doing real well because of this virus, and why? Can you speak to that?
I can maybe try, Melissa, and then jump in. We did a lot of initial reach out to the clients that we work with, the small business community, making hundreds of phone calls to understand where they were. I have to admit that we haven't continually done that level of reach out. We haven't been able to maintain kind of regular weekly phone calls with all of those entrepreneurs or business owners. So we had a good feel about where everyone was in the first weeks and months or so of the crisis. I would say that what we know now is a little more anecdotal, so we don't have the same kind of data around internally how we're doing. But so just I kind of preface any other responses with that reality that we just couldn't make, we couldn't perform surveys or phone calls of all of those often enough to fully understand where everyone is at. But anecdotally, I'll let Melissa answer some of her perceptions on kind of the industries and the types of businesses that are suffering or gaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in the first couple months when we did our initial survey, I would actually say over 50% of the businesses were closed temporarily, mainly because of quarantine. And the biggest needs that they were seeing were just more so needing funding for overhead operations, their payroll, and maintaining some of their staff. We did see a smaller percentage of those businesses that we were working with that had to shut down completely. And usually those individuals were just starting. So they were the ones who didn't have access to some of the emergency funds through the government, the federal funds, or any of the Lancaster city emergency funds, just because of timing. So that, I would say those are some of the major takeaways. The essential businesses obviously were still winning through quarantine, the ones that were able to maintain their doors open. But again, there was a high demand for a lot of the grocery stores or the food service industry, who were able to kind of pivot their models and start doing curbside pickup or delivery, mainly those types of services. But again, some of their biggest needs were, at that point, were hiring individuals and continuing additional funds to maintain the demand.
Yeah, I was wondering, so would you help them get the PPP loans?
So we did some of that. So we are an SBA grant recipient. So we have a women's business center at Assets. So a lot of the work that we do is one-on-one technical assistance, and also just providing any type of information around PPP, around EIDL, and doing one-on-ones, webinars, partnerships with SCORE, and the Entrepreneurship Coalition in Lancaster to help disseminate a lot of that information on how to access those funds. We did a lot of that actually in the beginning, the first, 3 or 4 months of quarantine.
So of all the 500 people companies you work with, how many got PPP loans?
From our list, I would say about 25%.
Only
Wow.
25.
Yeah. It was
And why so low? What's the percentage?
So Jonathan, feel free to jump in on this, but I know at that first wave, the PPP, a lot of the clients that we have, that we work with are solopreneurs and weren't eligible until the recent PPP, the PUA came out, which was around June, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. All the months are kind of floating into each other, but.
Yeah, I mean, so especially in the early days in the first round of the funding, if you didn't have a good bank relationship, very unlikely that you were going to get the proposal turned in time. And so a lot of the folks that we work with, they don't have strong bank relationships. And even if they did, the banks were prioritizing larger companies. So that was, especially initially, a big concern. And also we just acknowledge that because we work with a lot of small businesses, a lot of them are like one-person shops that were better off, either didn't qualify for the PPP because of the employment structure, or they didn't think they qualified, or they couldn't produce the financial reports and the things they need to actually turn in the application. Like their personal and business finances are a little more fluid than are necessary to do kind of formal reports that are needed for that kind of government funding. So some of it was just by nature of the size or the structure of the business that just didn't, it wasn't the right bucket for them to do PPP. But many fell through the cracks. I was just anecdotally, again, was with a really good business owner on the south side of Lancaster City over the weekend to get have him do some work for me, and runs maybe a 5 or 10 person shop, does really great work. And we've worked with him on assets before, but he didn't see any of our communication. We weren't able to communicate directly with him on an individual basis, and he just was too busy doing his thing to apply. It's just there was some communication disconnects where we didn't think he qualified. He actually did. He just didn't think he did, and so he missed out on the opportunity. So I immediately try to get him connected to some of these new resources that are coming through. But there are just sometimes the communication channels weren't good enough. As much as we tried and others tried, and so folks sometimes fall through the cracks.
There was also one of the things we heard a lot from our entrepreneurs was we just went into quarantine. There was so much uncertainty for what's the next couple months going to look like. Their businesses were sort of at a standstill. The idea of taking on a loan with having no real understanding of what things are going to look like from the bottom line point of view for a lot of our businesses, to try and take that on was a huge risk for a lot of the entrepreneurs that we were working with. Also with the constant change on the requirements and the repayment policies from these loans, there was a lot of confusion there. And again, from our entrepreneur standpoint, it just seemed a little risky for them.
Yeah. So looking forward, go ahead, Art.
I think it's interesting because if you look at the jobs created, you're trying to help entrepreneurs. This program really wasn't very helpful, just because of the way the government went to run this program. So I'm sitting here thinking it'd be interesting if you could come up with the statistics about maybe how this recovery program or COVID impacted these small entrepreneurial business in a much worse than the larger company. I mean, in our small companies, I have a pretty much a full-time lawyer and accountant doing all the applications for all the different businesses, and it doesn't stop. Even you've got these SBA loans up to 150,000, which are actually very good. It gives you long-term financing. But I would assume a lot of your small entrepreneurs wouldn't even know how to go about even applying. Isn't that something is that something you help out on? I'm trying to get a handle on that.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Art. Especially on the stuff that was like first come, first serve. If you didn't have a good accountant and a good lawyer on hand to hustle things through for you, which like almost none of our small business clients do, then you were out of luck. And even now, as you know, like as new things roll out and there's maybe a little longer time frame, you still have to be able to produce the financial reports and track data that, you know, in a pretty sophisticated way. So we've tried to help. We've done our best to build up our own capacity to help and partner with other resources in the community to pass folks off and make sure that if we couldn't help, maybe someone else could. But there's more need than there was capacity to help. Because it's a lot of this is like one-on-one in the weeds, spending hours with an entrepreneur to walk through the process. And there's just not enough hours in the day for the staff that we have.
Yeah. I know the work you all have done to help guide your entrepreneurs through this. I mean, I can't imagine where they would be without that help, right? It's just it's a tough environment. And I think Art's got a good point. It'd be interesting to do almost a forensic analysis of how has this aid helped, not helped, what to go forward, what might work. And that'd be something that I think would be interesting. In terms of going forward for assets, how do you think this time in our country's history and in Lancaster's history of COVID, of the different racial justice movements, how do you think assets work will change going forward?
Yeah, I'll speak first, Melissa, then you can go. But you know, I think we have found some interesting ways to meet the moment, which we're proud of. So some of the stuff we've already talked about, but on top of that, helping to launch a citywide grant program for Lancaster City, businesses in Lancaster City. You know, and we're proud that we're able to target a lot of businesses that, first of all, didn't receive any other government funding. So those that fell through the cracks at least receive something, even if it was small, from our fund. And also those underserved entrepreneurs that maybe aren't as well represented in the city or are particularly vulnerable. So, you know, we're able to do that, but that also means we've established a relationship with even more small businesses in the community and been seen as a resource. And now the framework that we use for our city grants influence the county grants that are coming through for small businesses countywide. And then the same framework has also influenced some statewide funding that is coming through, that's being managed by the a group of statewide community development financial institutions, of which Assets and Community First Fund are both involved. Yeah, we're proud that we've been able to create these other resources and influence some of these other larger resources that will get to those that maybe fell through the cracks of the federal government stuff. And then again, I think that will just open doors for us as to engage with these businesses in a more robust way moving forward. Exactly how that looks or what that looks like, still to be determined, because we're still in the thick of just like trying to get these resources out. But now we're building the relationship. Those relationships have begun, and we can see how we can both help those businesses grow, but again, help those businesses align with the other values of Assets around building a business that's environmentally sustainable, that is engaging with its community in a positive way, that is promoting racial equity, that is building stronger society through the business as well. So we're really looking at this as a great launch pad for our organization, because the opportunities and the needs are so great. We're excited to jump into those needs, and we received some funding because of our position to help expand into the needs. So we're excited to continue to grow and to leap forward from now.
Great.
So what did I miss?
I would just add that what we've learned over the past few months, just talking and just being engaged with our entrepreneurs, we've really identified some major gaps in what we have been doing and what's possible to enhance the business community moving forward. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that we heard from almost every single entrepreneur is how to build a more resilient business model, and including the sustainability piece, the social and environmental and the financial. So we work predominantly with, I work predominantly with individuals that come in the idea phase. So how do we start integrating those three pieces from the beginning to help them be able to, for whatever reason, looking forward into what could potentially harm your business model if we were to have another pandemic similar to this? How can you come out winning and not have to be in a place where you're stuck, as some of our business owners are experiencing right now, and not have to be so high risk to potentially closing their business doors forever, which doesn't help the equitable business community movement. So one of the biggest takeaways I've found in talking with our entrepreneurs, for sure.
Yeah, resiliency is huge, right? It's going to need to be injected into the way we think about all forms of government, private, public, all that stuff everybody's got to think about resiliency. So real quick before we say goodbyes here, we like to end these little chats with a fun question in terms of what hobbies some people have started bird watching. Phil Wanger from the Conservancy said he's really gotten into bird watching, and just kind of see what hobbies, books, any new music have you gotten into during this time, been able to make use of it?
I'll start first. So since I'm not able to make it to the gym, the physical gym, I've actually been doing a lot of the at-home workouts. So I've been taking these dance classes that I've always wanted to take. So I've been getting into that. And most recently, I've been diving into this book called Getting Beyond Better. Has been really interesting, learning about the social and environmental impact in business models and how that has a greater impact in a community. So
cool. How about you, Jonathan?
I have in the midst of all that was going on at Assets and all that was going on in the world, I also had my first child. And so I have an 8-week-old daughter, turned 8 weeks old today. And so, yeah, there's no new hobbies. There's no reading books. There's survival. I do the work I need to do, and I survive. Right? Exactly. Yeah. I sleep sometimes, not that much, honestly, but yeah. So it's really about there's one hobby, and it's her. It's Emery, my new daughter, and that's where all of my extra time goes at this point.
Oh, cool. Congratulations. That's great. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for all the hard work you're doing in Lancaster. We're happy to be able to highlight what you're doing here, and maybe we'll stop back in and do a checkup at some point with you on one of these. So thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks for having us, Jonathan.
Yeah.